Hello, everyone. My name is John Degen. I'm chair of the International Authors Forum and executive director of the Writers Union of Canada. I'm very pleased to welcome you to this discussion today about the AuthorSHARE Reused Book Royalty Program. This is the latest in a series of talks stemming from the IAF's Creating a Living report, which you can find right on the IAF website. Let me remind you quickly that this talk is being recorded and it's also being streamed live on Facebook. If you intend to tweet about this event, and we certainly encourage you to do so, please try to use the hashtags AuthorSHARE and Creating a Living. I want to start by acknowledging that my home in Canada is in Tekaronto, which is a Mohawk word translating to where the trees meet the water, or the gathering place. Tekaronto is bound by Dish with One Spoon, a treaty between the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee to share the territory, promote peace, and protect the land. I acknowledge them and any other nations who care for the land, recorded and unrecorded, and I pay my respects to Canada's first storytellers and artists. I'm extremely grateful to have a home here. So I begin with a land acknowledgement as a recognition that the work that I do does not exist in a vacuum. I'm part of a community. I depend on that community for survival and benefit, and importantly, I have responsibilities back to that community. It's all a matter of mutual respect, and this, I think, leads quite naturally into our discussion today. At the heart of the AuthorSHARE program are these concepts of mutual respect, recognition, and responsibility. In so much of the advocacy work that I do in my jobs, I talk about the ecosystem of the writing and publishing market, how it depends on a delicate balance of interests and responsibilities. There are no books as physical objects without publishing houses and publishing services. There are no readers without bookstores, libraries, schools, and the licensing structures that serve them. There's no market for books without readers and consumers. And of course, there are no texts and stories with which to fill books without authors. We all need each other for this enterprise to work, and we must always strive to keep the virtuous circle of our ecosystem moving. Sometimes the circle moves very well to everyone's benefit, but at other times, if some element of the system is out of balance, things fall apart and the center cannot hold, etc. And if you follow this business even moderately closely, you'll know that we're currently in one of those breakdown phases. Despite healthy book sales in most markets, author incomes are in rather steep decline. Copyright licensing structures and their attendant royalties are threatened by corporate interests, ignoring the important balance of our ecosystem. Book piracy is rampant, and there is a worrying failure of regulation that needs immediate attention by our governments. And so the AuthorSHARE program is a new and extremely welcome participant in our virtuous circle. And may I be the first here today to thank William Pryor for conceiving of it and the rest of our panelists for contributing to it and putting it into motion. I dearly hope we'll soon be calling AuthorSHARE the successful British test case that spread this winning concept around the globe. So in a nutshell, AuthorSHARE pays a sales royalty back to the author of a title when it's resold in the used book market. Specifically, the book reuse markets of British online retailers, Bookbarn International and World of Books. We have a wonderful panel with us today, all of whom are deeply involved in the AuthorSHARE program. So let's get to introductions. William Pryor is chairman of Bookbarn International, founded in 2000. Bookbarn is one of the largest booksellers in the UK, shipping new, used, and rare books from their warehouse in Somerset to customers all over the world every day. Bookbarn's slogan is read, reuse, recycle, which is the core philosophy of their entire business. Books in great shape make their way to consumers, either through Bookbarn's physical shop or online sales. More distressed books might find a home in the Books by the Yard program, and books in more desperate shape are recycled responsibly. I believe it's fair to say that William Pryor is the father of the AuthorSHARE idea. Welcome, William. Steve Potter is head of partnerships for World of Books, a 2-decade-old business dedicated to rescuing what they call pre-loved books and making sure the lives of those books are extended in the marketplace. World of Books describes itself as a circular economy, for-profit business founded on the ethos to do good, help charities, and make positive impact. They're a leading global seller of quality used books and innovators in reuse and recycling. World of Books inventory has grown to over 7 million items in stock, and they sell a book somewhere in the world every 2 seconds. These are staggering numbers and a thrill to the heart of any author. Welcome, Steve. Nicola Solomon is Chief Executive of the Society of Authors in the UK, or as I like to think of her, the British me. But that's wrong. I'm the Canadian Nicola, because her qualifications for many parts of this job far exceed mine, and I lean on her a lot for mentorship and professional advice. Nicola is expert in copyright law and author contracts, and she's a working solicitor and judge. At the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, Nicola spearheaded the creation of the Authors Emergency Fund for writers affected financially by coronavirus, a partnership effort by the Society of Authors, Authors Licensing and Collecting Society, the Royal Literary Fund, English Pen, the T.S. Eliot Foundation, Amazon, and Arts Council England. This fund grew to £1.7 million and inspired our community here in Canada to create a similar fund. Thank you for being here, Nicola. And my colleague, Owen Atkinson, is CEO of Authors Licensing and Collecting Society in the UK. ALCS is a not-for-profit organization with over 114,000 members. They make sure authors receive the money they're entitled to when someone copies or uses their work. ALCS collects money for uses of copyright protected materials from all over the world and then pays it out to their members. The total ALCS has paid out, quoted on their website, is £570 million. But knowing how websites work, that number might be a bit low already. ALCS has taken on the job of distributing AuthorSHARE royalties from the fund created by Bookbarn and World of Books. So welcome, Owen. I assume that members of our audience today will have questions for our panelists. Please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen to post your questions, and we'll get to as many as we can as time allows. But I'm going to start off with some questions of my own. So I've given the nutshell description of the AuthorSHARE program, but let's dig into the details a little bit more. William, you are the architect of AuthorSHARE. Can you give us a bit of background? What was your original thinking, and how did you get AuthorSHARE off the ground?
Architect is a bit of a grand label for me, because the beginning of it was really quite naive. It was simply, there I was as owner of 1.2 million books, secondhand books, and thinking, what the authors are getting out of this? They get nothing. And from there led the idea that became AuthorSHARE. Without the involvement of World of Books, we wouldn't have got it going. I first put it forward in 2015 and hoped I would get some of our competitors to join, but no one did. And then World of Books decided it was a good fit for their environmental and socially responsible aim in life. And I think it's interesting to note that AuthorSHARE couldn't possibly happen 20 years ago, because it needed the likes of World of Books and Bookbarn to be there with our industrial methods of selling secondhand books in vast quantities. There it makes sense, because the small margins will mean something. So I'm very excited that we're doing this today, and I have fond hopes that it will grow and grow. I think we need to, I'm beginning to explore, I'm not getting anywhere, but to explore how else the relationships between publishers, booksellers, and readers will change with this coming along, because it is a fundamental change to the book trade.
Absolutely. So you're saying that you think the size of the two participants right now, Bookbarn and World of Books, was absolutely instrumental to getting this concept off the ground?
Yes, because one of your later questions was, what about the little one-man used bookseller?
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be a struggle to make that fit into what is AuthorSHARE, because of the numbers are just so small.
Yeah. I think the technology available to us today will help with that, to integrate the smaller
Yeah.
smaller stores. Yeah. So let's go in a slightly different direction then. Nicola, can you talk about the importance of a program like this for your members and for the author community around the world? I mentioned income decline in my intro. Can you speak a bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I just want to really start with huge thanks to World of Books and Bookbarn for engaging in this, and to ALCS for agreeing to do the administration. But as you say, authors' incomes are low and they've been falling. The last ALCS survey showed that in the UK, they'd fallen in real terms by about 41% between 2005 and 2017. We're just about to go into the new survey. I don't imagine it being any different. I know that you've done things in Canada. I know that America and Australia have done the same, and all of us are seeing the same sort of falls in median professional author incomes. And those incomes here around £10,000, that isn't enough to make a living. And so really we need to make sure that every time a book is read, an author is rewarded for it. But there are other reasons it's really important to me too. We know there is a huge used book market, but oddly, in the whole publishing world, used books really aren't spoken about very much at all. It's like a kind of, well, we're not even discussing that. When we discuss sales, we don't think about that. And yet we know from the kind of figures we've been given here, there's a huge market in used books that ought to be integrated into the whole economy. And we know how good it is for the environment. In a world where we're all looking at our carbon footprint, we need to make sure that books are used as many times as possible. It isn't actually sustainable anymore for books to be read once and gone on. But then it's equally, if it's against the author's interests for books to be read more than once because authors will only be paid once, they've got no interest in promoting sales of used books, which is dangerous because authors are really good spokespeople. So we need them to be engaged also in the used book market. And one way to do that is to make sure they're paid for it. So we sort of owe this scheme to our planet as well as to our authors, I think it's fair to say. And another reason is authors love to know that they're read. And it's a very lonely life being an author. That traditional view of an author sitting in a room and tapping away is actually not so far from true. Many other creators work with other creators, but authors on the whole don't. And the excitement for getting your money through, the excitement our members we see when they get their money from ALCS, for secondary uses, our public lending rights scheme, when you get a small payment whenever your books are borrowed, the amount that authors appreciated is actually way out of proportion to the amount of money they get, because they know they're still being read. And the kind of books that are sold as used books or in libraries often maybe books that are out of print or have been out of print for some years or didn't ever have any sales, or the authors got paid in advance, but that advance never earned out, so they don't see the sales in the same way. So every time they get a small amount of money from AuthorSHARE, it's somebody loves me, someone loves my books, they're read, they're valued, and authors need to feel valued. It's really important to encourage them to keep writing and to sustain their morale. So, and in that way, the scheme is providing a unique link between readers and buyers. And that's part of the creative economy that, you know, as William alluded to, is also allowed by digital, that we can get much closer. That's why self-publishing has done very well. We can get closer to our own audiences. If authors have their own websites, they can direct them to places where they connect, where you can buy my books and I will get some money. It's part of, we've seen this with bookshop.org. It's something where we can see a fair trade economy really working, and where we can say to consumers, well, you could buy your secondhand books from elsewhere, but if you buy them from this site, I will get some money for it. And that increases the relationships. It also deflects from very large platforms which cream off quite a lot of authors' money. and directly to people who are prepared to say, actually, we will plow a bit of our profits back into creators. So for all these reasons, I think AuthorShare is just a fantastic initiative. And what I'd really say to any used bookseller is, take this scheme. Please take it. Please put it on your way. It's not very expensive for you, but you can get a huge marketing advantage for it, because if authors scream about this scheme, and if you put the AuthorShare badges on your website so people know, it can give you a unique advantage against your competitors.
Right, it will drive traffic, exactly. And let me just add my voice from Canada in thanks to both William and Steve. I just want to accentuate what Nicola was saying. Nicola, you have the same experience as I. We spend so much of our professional lives fighting against moments and incidents where rights and income are taken away from authors, and royalties are removed from authors. That's a major part of my job and Nicola's job. I think the first time I read about AuthorShare, I sort of, rubbed my eyes and thought, well, that's not right. That can't be happening, because it's just so unusual. So yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Let's get Stephen here from World of Books. Maybe Steve, you can elaborate a bit more about the circular economy you mentioned in your company's self-definition. How do you view that big picture, and how does your participation in AuthorShare fit into that?
Yeah, hi, thank you, John. Thanks for the introduction there. And actually, I will start by William does underplay his part in how AuthorShare has evolved. He really was the architect, and yeah, World of Books has been really grateful for William's input and counsel, I think, over the evolution of AuthorShare. And actually, reflecting upon Nicola's comment there that AuthorShare, comes about as much because we owe the planet. Well, actually, I think that perhaps is where the circular economy really comes into play. And I think probably like William, we at World of Books consider ourselves to be really at the forefront of pioneers of the circular economy. But actually, what is that? What is the circular economy? We talk about it a lot, but I guess in its rawest form, it's an alternative to the sort of, I guess, fairly linear traditional model of make, use, and then dispose, which is true of many industries and many products. The idea of the circular economy is that it keeps resources in use for as long a time as possible, recognizing the value and extracting the most value from them. I mean, just a very brief overview, I guess, of how World of Books actually goes about that, how we contribute to the circular economy. I'll keep it short. It's not purely an advert for World of Books, but we take mainly books, although there is some CD and DVD product that we take that people don't want and find them a new home. And the majority of those items, majority of books are coming from charity shops, libraries. We have a buyback scheme called Zifit, whereby individuals can trade books into us as well. And we also collect from book banks. The majority of our product is coming from the charity sector in the UK. Although, again, to both William and Nicola's points, actually, we are looking at how we can extend that into the publishing ecosystem more broadly. We will process those books that we acquire, and we will sell on what we can, and then everything else is responsibly recycled. Nothing will go to waste. So I guess the nature of that circular economy is that we're benefiting charities, we're benefiting the environment, and we're seeking and finding new homes for those books and for book lovers. again, as the previous participants have alluded to, that the used book market has grown year on year for several years now, and actually I think there's probably a lot of that is down to consumer recognition as to the importance of the circular economy that I've mentioned there. The piece that has always been missing, I guess, from the puzzle is are the authors who have missed out traditionally on the benefits that this circular economy can bring. So AuthorSHARE, whilst it was born out of William's concept, is one that we at World of Books very much share, very proud to be part of. And yeah, it's, I guess, continuing that life cycle and trying to ensure that authors are benefited and paid as that all parts of the journey.
Yeah, so going back to what William was saying, it's really about analyzing the value chain of the book economy and seeing, oh, wait a second, there's something missing here once we get down to the reuse side, and being respectful of that. So thank you very much. I'm going to go to Owen for some details on how ALCS is administering the AuthorSHARE program. But before I do that, I just want to remind people, if you have questions for the panelists, we're here to answer your questions about AuthorSHARE and similar concepts. And put your questions in the Q&A and we will get to you when we can. Owen, do you have some details for us? How many authors are involved? What are your timelines? How are you paying out this money?
Tell it all, John. Thanks for that. Yeah, I'll see what I can do to help. So I think we're really proud to be part of this. It is a groundbreaking scheme, and we worked with William back in 2015 to try and get it off the ground. And he does underplay the part he put. It's been his passion for a number of years now. So William, thanks a lot for that. And Steve, World of Books, for really giving it that impetus and that sort of critical mass as well. So just to give you an idea, we're here to make sure that money gets out to authors. It's our passion. And by March, we estimate about 36,000 authors all around the world will have received payments from these sort of used book sales. And that is a really, really great sort of achievement in its first year. So the nuts and bolts, well, we're sort of the sausage machine, if you like. We're there just to get those sausages out to the authors. And what we wanted to do was to come up with a scheme. I think we all wanted to come up with a scheme that ensured as much money as possible could get back to the writers. And so the way it works, it's actually a very easy scheme from our behalf. All we ask for from World of Books or from our Bookbarn International is that they give us ISBNs and associated payments made up from what I think is a proportion of their profits that they give back to the authors. We then take that and actually run it through our databases. As you mentioned, John, we actually collect and distribute money for a lot of different secondary rights. And yes, 560 million is a bit out of date now, but we've got about another 27 million going out in March.
Excellent.
And what we're trying to do is make sure that when we make that payment, we also make payments for the used book sales that happen online. And we have a database of hundreds of thousands of books. So we're quite easily and quite efficiently able to actually identify all the contributors to these works and actually ensure that those contributors are paid. What I would say, though, is, the scheme is in its infancy, and we very much hope that other sort of used book retailers will become involved in it. But we did have to sort of make some actually quite difficult decisions to begin with. At the moment, we can't pay illustrators, for example, because actually we don't have a database of sole illustrators. We do pay illustrators who are also authors, but we can't actually make those payments because the costs of actually going out and finding those illustrators is actually just punitive. But we're hoping to find solutions to that. And I think another restriction is that we don't pay estates and the beneficiaries of estates. And that's an important thing to mention because, of course, copyright does last 70 years. after death, but this is a voluntary scheme that we've come
Right.
up with within the UK. And we felt that actually we should focus on getting money back to writers, living writers, so they can continue to actually help create works, continue to create works and benefit society in that way. So at the moment, it is limited to living writers, but these are things that we will be looking at as the scheme grows, I'm sure. So we take the information, we split it, and we make payments. And we've had a fantastic response, to be honest with you, from our members. I've seen members tweeting about this. And as I think Nicola said, it's not just about the payment, but it is about the recognition that their works that maybe aren't commercially available elsewhere are actually still being bought and loved by people. And so, you know, it's really gone down well in the UK.
So maybe I missed the detail. Are you sending out AuthorSHARE payments at the same time as you send out your regular license royalty payments?
Oh yeah, sorry. Just to clarify, just to keep costs down, we send them out as part of our regular
Right.
royalty payments that we make. And if you think about it, the costs of sort of producing and sending out statements separately would just be a cost that
Makes
you know,
sense.
wouldn't
Yeah.
be going to the authors.
So it becomes a line item on what you get from ALCS.
Yeah.
That's
That'll
excellent.
say World of Books or Bookbarn International, so they know exactly where it's been.
Oh, isn't that
The
lovely?
vendor. There we go. Yeah.
Okay, selfish follow-up question from me. I have 3 books in the world from Canadian publishers, so not really being sold in the UK, but let's say there are hundreds of copies used of my books in the UK and they're being sold at World of Books and Bookbarn. Do I get something from ALCS through the reciprocal payment arrangement you have with Canada?
Oh, John, I should have checked on you, shouldn't I? I'm sure you're on our list to be paid. The answer is yes, as a writer, you do, if you are registered as a member of ALCS. And again, this is
Gotcha.
a thing. But actually, you can register online, and there is no upfront payment for joining ALCS.
Right.
Also, if you are a member of one of our reciprocal organizations, we have agreements with about 50 reciprocal organizations worldwide, then you will receive payments as well, as long as we have your records. So
Terrific.
we're trying to reach out to as many living writers as possible.
And Canada's organization Access Copyright is one of your partners.
And they are one of them. And I saw a lot of Canadian authors who we paid in September, and there's a lot more we'll be paying in March as well. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Let me go back to the booksellers just very, very quickly. Owen mentioned we do the tracking through ISBN numbers. I assume that's not onerous for you to provide that information through your systems, Steve or William?
Yeah, I can jump in there, John. No, it's actually fairly straightforward. I mean, it's what we do, business as usual, if you like, in terms of analysis of the type of genre, etc. book that we're selling. So no, it's actually a fairly straightforward process for us.
Great. Same for you, William, I would imagine.
Sorry.
Same answer
Yes,
for
same
you,
with
I would
us.
imagine?
Yes,
Yeah.
on a smaller
Yeah.
scale, but same with us.
On a
Absolutely.
smaller scale. Okay.
I'd like to raise, if I may, something
Yes,
that
go ahead.
Nicola was talking about, that this might be, and I touched on, entry into a new kind of book trade, where how the value of the secondhand gets appended to the value of the new book, and how we change the readers' ideas about how they read books, how they get books.
Yeah, exactly. We have a wonderful question from the Q&A, so I'm just going to jump to that before I get to any of my other questions. It's from someone named Catherine. I won't give the last name. If a small independent secondhand bookshop wanted to join the scheme, how should they go about it and whom should they approach? Do we know these details yet?
We haven't discussed these details, but we do need to develop a system that would enable that.
Yes, well, it sounds to me, according to Catherine, that there's some excitement.
Yes.
Small bookshops are busting down the doors of AuthorSHARE trying to get into the program. So
Yeah.
let's figure out these details. Personally, I can see this program being compared to public lending right programs in
Yeah.
various countries around the world. And if
Yeah.
people aren't familiar with PLR, that's the compensation for authors for ongoing library collection and lending of their work. And I'm sure the tracking is similar by ISBN and author name and everything. This obviously does similar work for book reuse in the commercial markets. But importantly, I think PLRs depend mostly on government funding, and some PLR schemes are even embedded in national copyright laws. I wonder if anyone can talk about this. Can you see a similar approach for AuthorSHARE in the future as it grows? At least the idea of bringing governments in as funding partners, or even going so far as to legislating royalties for reused books. I know in recent years, we've seen the rise of artist resale rights laws coming in around the world to compensate visual artists for resale of their work. Is that possibly in the future, Owen or Nicola?
That's
John,
what
can
got
I
me-
just
Can
come
I
in?
say something?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, can I just
sorry.
come in on the previous,
Yeah.
because I thought it was such a fantastic question about the independent secondhand bookshop.
Yeah, please, yes.
Just to say, we have set up a sort of governance steering group, which looks at this and discusses actually how we might grow the scheme. I'm quite happy to be the email recipient, shall we say, and if anyone is interested in joining the scheme, please do get in touch. We'd really like to talk to you, and I'd be happy to sort of get information and feed that back into the steering group as well, so that actually we can get more participants involved.
And I wanted to add something which is actually on both schemes, both questions really, and in fact on the further one, which is like, what if I can't be bothered to log the specific figures? One of the great things about this being a flexible voluntary scheme, and that we haven't gone into, is that each of the people who are participating in the scheme decides how much the contribution is they make. So they decide how much they're going to pay. It can be limited, and then they give the ISBN figures to work out how that's divided between the books that are actually sold. But because of that, there wouldn't be anything against, say, a bookshop deciding, well, we've earned £100 from used books this year, and we'll give 1% of all our earnings from used books to this scheme without us giving them any figures with it. And then we, the steering committee, would decide how that would be divided, which would probably be, well, let's just say we divide it in the same proportions as the information we do get in. And the great thing about it, one of the, the beauties of it, the World of Books and Bookbarn have done, is that it's really, really flexible. And also that if we can't trace the people to whom the money is entitled, it goes to a charity. And in this case, it's the Authors Contingency Fund, who you talked about at the beginning, which gives writers money to writers in need, because we felt very strongly that it shouldn't go to estates. At this point, it needed to go to living authors. And so obviously, it would be great if any governments would legislate for it. But I think that if retailers really looked at this, they should be able to see the appeal of it as a marketing ploy from their own point of view and a market advantage, rather than going into something which is very regulation heavy. We should be working, as we all are, on the economy of fair trade, of rewarding creators, of understanding the value rather than the cost of what we're doing. And that's why I really think badging what we're doing, saying we make a voluntary contribution to the scheme, we're doing it in a way that fits in with our own models, is the beauty of the scheme, actually. And the steering committee is made up of the retailers, but of authors and of ALCS, so that we can work together on what is the fairest way to make sure that this money gets into the hands of the creators.
Nicola, that's fantastic. Because I've been worrying about how we recruit new booksellers. World of Books and Bookbarn, we have maybe another 15 competitors of some size. what persuades them? They're all driven by good businessmen who run a mile when they say, oh, well, we've got to pay some money for this. But the way you've been putting it, Nicola, I think will win them over if we adopt that approach, that it's about the ecology of books. It's about the ecology of literature. It's about the future of literature in a way, is it not? And then if we can somehow involve publishers, I can't think how, but that would be extraordinary too.
I mean, I think it's about the future of literature, but but also not in a fair way. I think we can also say it makes sound commercial business sense for you.
Yeah.
And if you advertise that you're doing this, it should drive traffic direct to your sites, away from having to do it on intermediary sites. And therefore, there's a real business advantage to you in doing it as well.
Yeah,
and the fair trade market for other products is proof of that.
Yeah.
Sound business logic behind that. Yeah,
and I think it just reflecting back on the question around a smaller second-hand shop, because they're as much part of the ecosystem we're reflecting on as World of Books and Bookbarn. And to Owen's point there about him kindly offering to be the sort of the email conduit, if you like. I think it's incumbent upon us and the steering committee more generally to give real due consideration to how a firm like World of Books that has got lots of data analysts and people that can easily pull together sort of vast swathes of information, how we can help the smaller secondhand shops and the smaller parts of the ecosystem. So yeah, just to reflect or to back up Owen's comment, really, that please do get in touch, and we should be giving real consideration to how we can help.
Thanks, Stephen.
It'd be marvellous if we could get Hay on Wye to adopt it, all the shops there, because it'd be part of their ethos as well.
Yeah,
can you explain Hay on Wye for our international audience who may not be familiar?
Hay on Wye is a small, beautiful little town on the border in Wales. And some 30 or 40 years ago, this maverick of a chap who decided he was the king of hay started bringing in huge container loads of books from the States and populated, I think at peak, with about 36 bookshops in a town with a 2,000 population. And ever since, it's been a tourist attraction. So books are a tourist tool as well. It's something we know at Bookbarn. We have a cafe, we have a large car park. And a lot of people come simply because they love being lost in books for a day.
So that's where I'll be retiring then. Hay on Wye. That sounds
but
good.
But what's really interesting for this initiative, and why I think actually I hadn't really thought of it before, Hay on Wye became a fair trade town in 2008. Yes. It's a fair trade town. So why we're not going to a town which is primarily made up of bookshops and saying, you're a fair trade town, here's a way to bring your bookshops into being a fair trade town. It seems to me that this is a very easy sell. So here's an idea you've given the steering committee that I think should be a first action for us to follow up on.
Great, good, I agree.
So we have another question in the Q&A, and this will be for Owen, and I think you may have already answered it, but it's good to get these details done. Should authors join on their own? I assume they mean join the AuthorSHARE program, or are they expected to join through their copyright licensing agencies?
That's a great question. What I would say there is that if we have agreements with those agencies abroad, I would recommend that actually payments are made that way. And that's just really, John, about economies of scale. Banks charge fees to, particularly international fees, to actually send out, and that would eat in to any sort of payments that would be due. But of course, if we can send as part of much larger payments, we can keep those charges down, and more of the money goes to the actual writers, the authors concerned. So if we've got agreements with about 50, a list of those are on our website, but you can check with your own copyright agency as to whether there is a reciprocal agreement. If not, encourage them to get one with us. Yeah.
Great. And Owen, while I still have you, I have more of a comment than a question, but it seems to me if the ALCS didn't exist and we wanted an AuthorSHARE program, we would have to invent an ALCS to do the administrative side of it. So it really it really points out that if we're going to get super creative in the cultural marketplace, we need agencies like yours in place already to do the sort of heavy lifting on that side. And here I'm talking directly to any Canadian government people who might be watching, because we're dealing right now with the danger of losing our copyright licensing agency in Canada. And if we want to be creative in our marketplace, we need an agency like that.
I think you do, yeah. And actually, ALCS was founded on the back of a campaign for public lending right for PLR. And, it took us a long time to get off the ground. But having established ALCS, it's great just to see how it can actually collect money from so many different sources, payments that wouldn't go back to authors otherwise. And so actually at ALCS, we're really sort of, just proud to be able to actually make sure authors get paid for these things. And of course, when we were approached by William and then by World of Books as well, and Steve, and just saying, actually, could you be the conduit for this? We said, absolutely, guys. Yeah. It's like, yeah.
We have a question here from somewhere in Africa. I'm not quite sure where, but the question is, what are the footprints of AuthorSHARE and ALCS in Africa? And I assume it has to do with your reciprocal agreements. Is that right, Owen?
Yep. Okay. Yep. Limited at the moment, I have to say. We've got agreements in South Africa. We have some other sort of agreements. We're certainly talking with the society in Nigeria. The whole list, I can't remember them all, but they're on our website. But if we don't have an agreement with a collecting society, we are very interested in talking if they are established. And it could well be that we've got money for some of their members from other sources as well. So do get in touch.
Right. Okay, and mostly rather than questions, we're having a lot of encouraging chat in the chat, and a lot of people thanking the inventors of AuthorSHARE for doing so. Okay, we have another question. I have over 100 books, which I bought for a knockdown price from my publishers. When some of my books went out of print, I need to offload them. How can I get them to a Bookbarn without driving there or paying high postage rates? So I guess that's directly for you, William. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, William, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'll have to unmute you.
It depends where the books are living at the moment.
Right.
But please be in touch.
So yes, so
I think
the
William,
questioner should be in direct touch with Bookbarn. Sorry, is that Owen?
I think they're in Cambridge, William. I know Di, so I think they're probably in Cambridge.
Well, Cambridge, yes, right. We can arrange something. Ask the chap to be
similarly happy for you to get in touch with us. You may even get a bidding war on your hands.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, I hadn't even connected that in my head. A lot of authors have a lot of copies of their own books that they've bought from their publisher, and this sort of opens things up in a new way, doesn't it?
That's a
lovely idea. Okay, I'm packing my suitcase with all my old books and bringing them to you, William. And
right, okay, good.
That's terrific.
John, can I just give an example, actually a personal example of how AuthorSHARE is already working. And it's my partner is a member of a book club, and I mentioned AuthorSHARE to her because they were one of the books they were reading. They wanted to get copies from all. Members of book clubs love the authors they read and everything. And when they heard that actually they could buy them and a payment could go back to the author as well, they were like, well, where do I go and everything? So I was able to point them in the right direction, guys. So some of your sales will be from the Kingston book club down in North Kingston, and hopefully there'll be an author benefiting from that later this year.
It really occurs to me quite strongly that this is actually extending the life of titles for authors in a completely new way. because, you know, you go into a first run bookstore and often backlist titles that just don't exist there. For a lot of authors, there isn't a lot of depth on those shelves. And this encourages much greater depth within the market. So that's fabulous. All sorts of reasons for me to be thanking you folks.
There's an interesting dynamic in our business, which I'm sure is the same for World of Books, is that the majority of our stock is just one copy. So unlike a publisher, we can't spend marketing money on one book. It has to be about the concept. It has to be about everything we've been talking about, that you are buying the books. You know, you can find if we've got it, but we're not going to market it, which changes the dynamics.
Well, this has been a fabulous discussion, and there is a lot of excitement in the chat. Oh, we have one more question, and I will get to that before we say goodbye. The question is, how do you calculate royalty for a particular used book? So I think, Owen, maybe you went into that before.
I guess it's one for William and Steve, in which they will be setting the calculations.
Steve, for you.
Yeah, so we both companies, Bookbarn and World of Books, have agreed a pot of money, if you like, on an annual basis, and as our joint businesses grow, that pot can be extended as time progresses, and indeed as other retailers and resellers join the scheme. So that's something we'd actively encourage everyone watching us today to speak to respective resellers in their own countries or territories, or indeed just down the road. But I think the way that those pots are divvied up, we will provide our sales information, which we alluded to earlier on. That's all calculated on an ISBN basis. We will provide that data and monies to Owen's association, and it's divvied up thereafter. I think I'm encapsulating it in a very brief nutshell there, William. I'm not sure if you have anything to add, but I think that's the extent.
Should we talk about the Houses of Parliament, Owen?
Sorry, Owen, you're on mute.
Yeah. I'm on mute, sorry, yeah. Thanks, William. Yeah, actually, there's been a lot of interest within Parliament of this scheme, and we have an event in the summer when we will be inviting actually a lot of UK book resellers to come along and to meet with ministers, MPs and members of the House of Lords, and just to actually continue to raise the profile of this, because it's an important scheme, and I'm hoping it's going to be a scheme that actually grows and benefits more and more authors. So we have an event in the summer, and we'll be reporting back on that afterwards. I think it's in June. But
right, good.
Yep. John, would you mind if I asked a question myself? Which
I don't mind at all. I was looking for new questions, but if you have one, you go right ahead.
I guess I should probably know the answer to this, but I'm sorry, this is for you as well, and I'm not expecting an exact number, but earlier you mentioned that thus far about 36,000 authors have benefited from the AuthorSHARE scheme. Where does that sit as your overall? How many authors would benefit through ALCS annually, ordinarily? If that does that make sense? Sorry, my question.
It does, Steve. So we got about 114,000 members. We pay in the region of about 90,000 of those in any 1 year. And so in the first year, about a third of those have had payments, which I think just shows the breadth of repertoire that's available actually through your site, and the breadth of repertoire that's actually purchased year on year as well. So, you know, we thought that was absolutely fantastic. And, you know, with the next tranches of payments coming along, I'm sure we'll be sitting here in a year's time saying 70,000 people have been received payments or something. So, you know.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thanks, Owen. That's what a great number. Yeah, to hit a third is really fantastic. Thank you.
So we've had a question in the chat as to whether or not a recording of this talk will be available, and I believe it will be on the International Authors Forum's YouTube channel, so that's not a problem. I'm not seeing any more questions come through the Q&A, and I've pretty much reached the end of my questions. So I think we could, oh, wait a second, there's one more. From Diane again, what if an author who donates to Bookbarn or World of Books would like their payment directed to a charity? Is that viable? Interesting question. Owen, is that something
I
that
think
you...
it's a question for you, Owen.
I'll take that. Certainly, if when we receive, it's really for how it works within, if you like, World of Books and Bookbarn. But when we received the spreadsheets through that sort of said, actually, we'd like this to go to the charity, which is the Society's Authors Emergency Fund, Authors Fund, we could certainly make sure that happens. That would not be difficult at all. Probably want to take up with our steering committee, but I don't see any technical challenges around that from our perspective.
I mean, equally, people could tell you directly, couldn't they, in relation to any of your payments, that they can go directly to a charity, and I don't think that's particularly an issue. And there are plenty of the charity we chose for this was the Authors Contingency Fund, simply because the whole purpose of it was to help authors in need, and there are certainly plenty of authors in need. So, and it's a very light touch charity which doesn't charge very high management fees. So, but the steering committee, the people we don't have on this panel today, but the steering committee, as I said, has got any number of authors on it, so it's really important that they direct where the money goes. But I really like the idea that we might look at used bookshops, and even just devise a scheme which just goes, you decide what amount it is, but you don't have to do the paperwork if you don't want to. But the other side of it is that the world is becoming more and more digital. People have to, as both Steve and William have said, you are recording this information anyway. It would be almost impossible for you to run your sites if you weren't recording this information. And I expect that's true of bookshops now too. So it's quite light touch. So yeah, I think it's very exciting for us to move it forward, and really, really important going forward for the way that book sales will go. It's really important, I think. And we are hugely grateful, as I say.
Yeah, I was thinking about it.
Sorry,
go ahead, William.
Bookshop.org.
What's
what
that?
do you think, Nicola?
Sorry, William, I missed what you asked.
I said, do you think there's a possible tie-up with bookshop.org?
I mean, they're not selling used books, as I understand it, at the moment, but if they are, it's certainly worth speaking to them. But no, there are so many ways to take this forward. And there was a really good comment made about, have you let the press know? We did let the press know originally. There were some articles, but I think it will be time to do another push. And the time to do that will be to get some retailers. So I think that the points that were made here about linking up with the fair trade movement are really powerful, and that would be a good time to get some more press. And we'd love to see this taken up worldwide, and would be very happy to talk to any organization to let them see the terms of reference and the details that we haven't been able to give today, that we looked at some of the questions that were asked about illustrators, about estates, and how we approach them. We'd be really happy to share any of it.
And we've actually had that question in the chat. What would you advise creators in countries where there is no benefit from their used books? So you would run that through their author associations, I assume, Nicola.
Yes, but I also think that the link, again, William, thanks, because you have to get the retailers interested, and so it's really important to show the business plan here, and that's why the endorsements from other retailers as to why they think it's valuable is important, because as was said before, we'll be talking with business people and we have to present a business case.
Yes. And our competition, we are not competitive in the usual meaning of competition, because yes, we have a lot of the same books, obviously, but they appear in front of the author, in front of the buyer in different ways. So very rarely are we head to head with World of Books, for instance, just the way that the numbers drive it.
Well, there is another gigantic seller of used books, new and used books online. And has anyone approached Amazon regarding this
I
program?
approached them early on. Of course, I approached them early on. Remember, though, that they don't sell them per se. They
That's
are
right.
a platform for other people who are selling the used books. I mean, although, well, that's what they say, but in fact, they do also own some of the large used books platforms.
Right.
But they weren't that interested, it's fair to say, sadly. And actually, I think that for all of us, taking traffic away from them so that people know that there are websites you can go to direct without going through the Amazon platform, so that the share that goes to Amazon will go to the authors, is a very powerful way of doing it also, because we love Amazon for some of the things that they do, but their ethical record is not great. And so it is really nice if we can also drive packets, I would say, to smaller organizations. And I know that, you know, these Bookbarn and particularly Word Books are enormous by our standards, but they're tiny by Amazon standards. And it's really important that we should be sending traffic direct, I think, rather than creating monopoly positions.
It's very
Steve
exciting.
and I
I know
would totally agree with you, Nicola.
in Canada during the pandemic, one of the major stories in our sector is that all of the bookstores really improved their digital capacity to service the community. And I'm just imagining now that if they have used books as part of what they sell, as part of their inventory, and they put sort of an AuthorSHARE badge on their website as kind of a fair trade label, that would make a huge difference. Yeah. So that's how we're imagining it then. And you know, capacity in Canada is smaller because we have a much smaller market. But the way that you've built this program out already in the UK, sort of, you've given us the building blocks for it. So I love it. We'll be pushing this in Canada for sure.
Do we have competitors in the States?
For
half and half, isn't there's a company called Half something?
Yeah, I think you've got Half Price Books, William,
Half Price Books,
as people like Thrift and
yes,
Sell Back Your Book and a handful of others certainly. And interestingly, I was talking to, so World of Books has a small team based in the US, and we have a small operation out there as well. And I was chatting to my counterpart in the US earlier and explaining that, you know, I was coming on this webinar later in the day, and whilst he was aware of the scheme, I was giving him a lot more detail, and actually he felt that there would be, you know, some real momentum on the US side to move an AuthorSHARE scheme along on that side of the pond as well. So certainly, you know, something I can bring to the committee as we progress. But yeah, I guess just echoing, you know, what we've all said earlier on. You know, everyone that's sort of joined today, you know, you will have influence in your own areas, whether it's you own a secondhand bookshop or you know, you interact with one in some way or another. It's the more resellers that can come to the party, the more that authors will ultimately benefit. So yeah.
Well, and the more that consumers demand it. And what I really like as well is that we're also, it's also benefiting charities, because you're also paying charities for those books, so it's benefiting other charities as well. So it's a great circular economy.
I think we need an infographic.
Yes.
We're going to have to work on that. And I see a circle involved in it. Okay, so we have a couple of more questions, and I will quickly get to them. So can US authors join? Oh, the question went away. Half price books in the USA, have they been approached? Is that something?
No, we just covered that.
Yeah.
I think,
okay.
John, I
Owen,
answered the question on
You did.
US authors. So we do pay US authors. We've paid a lot of US authors. We have a agreement with the Authors Registry, which is based in New York, part of the Authors Guild, and we pay
Perfect.
US authors through those. So would very much recommend that they join the Authors Guild or the Authors Registry. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to call it. This has been a fantastic discussion, and I can tell you that there is a lot of excitement about this program now around the world. The International Authors Forum represents about 700,000 authors around the world, and I can tell you that this program is generating a lot of excitement, and it's certainly generating a lot of excitement here in Canada. So I will thank you all again, William, for inventing this idea, Steve for joining in with it, Nicola for pushing it as far as it's gone, and Owen for making it all happen. Thank you all very, very much. And if you want to watch this discussion again, or if you want to send a link to anyone to get them to watch it, it will be on the IAF YouTube channel, and you can probably access that just through their website at the IAF website. So thank you all very much. I will be visiting World of Books and Bookbarn the next time I'm in England, and we will talk to you all later.